So I would like to welcome, and if you want to come, yep, on video there, perfect. Um, are Lucia Costanzo and Alexander Cooper. Lucia is the research and scholarship librarian for the University of Guelph Library. And Alexander Cooper, or Alex, is the data services coordinator for Queen's University Library. And Lucia recently of the Alliance, but we congratulate her on her new role with University of Guelph. So thank you very much, Lucia and Alex.
Thanks, Lydia. So I'm going to start with a bit of background about the survey. I will note that the French versions of the slides will be available shortly in the next day or two, and I apologize for not having those ready today. So I'm also chair of the Research Intelligence Expert Group, and Lucia was the REG coordinator, and now in her new position at Guelph has become my co-chair. So I'm very excited still to have her working on REG. So the Research Intelligence Expert Group developed the Institutional Strategies RDM Strategy Survey to measure the institution's progress in the development of the RDM strategy, the barriers and challenges that institutions are facing, and what support they'll need to complete their strategy. The policy was first announced in March 2021. The first deadline was excuse me, sorry. The first deadline is March 2023, when institutions will be required to have their RDM strategies posted on their website. And a draft version of that strategy will be accepted to meet this requirement. And the requirement for the data management plans will be gradually rolled out through 2022 and 2023. And the data deposit requirement will be phased in after a review of the readiness of the Canadian research community. So just a bit more specific about the DMP requirement, just recently, the first grants that will be required to have a DMP were announced just about a month ago, and they're listed here by agency. And I believe Matthew Lucas will speak to this a bit more. So now a bit of background on the surveys themselves. So REG ran a version of this survey in June 2019, and it was done in anticipation of the announcement of the policy. And the survey measured where progress had been made in developing institutional strategies and what support the Alliance and other stakeholders could provide. And from the survey results, it showed that some institutions or quite a few institutions were hesitant to complete their strategies without the final version of the policy, that institutions were looking for more collaboration and a community of practice to help them develop strategies, and that they needed much more clear guidance on how to meet the policy requirements. So the current survey we ran in March 15th to April 12th of 2022 and was distributed through listservs and Alliance news items to institutions that are eligible to administer tri-agency funds. The bilingual survey consisted of 8 questions related to barriers and challenges in creating a strategy, what stage institutions are at in developing their strategy, who is involved, what resources are being used, and what additional guidance or support is needed. A full report of this survey, of which this presentation is based, is available in French and English in the Alliance Zenodo community, and the links are on the slides, but also Lucia has just put them in the chat if you'd like to if you'd like to look at those now. And now Lucia is going to review the results and the recommendations from the survey. You're muted.
I think you can hear me now. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
In the 2019 survey, we had 88 responses, and in 2022, the survey received 92 responses. In 2 instances, 2 responses were collected from the same institution. The largest number of respondents were from universities, followed by colleges and SAGEPs, and then other institutions, which included research centers and research hospitals. Regionally, the survey had greater representation from Ontario, and Ontario had the greater number of responses from all institution types, followed by the West and Quebec regions, which both had similar number of responses. The West did not have any respondents from the colleges or SAGEPs. The Atlantic region had the lowest number of respondents overall and the lowest response from universities and colleges. Before starting the survey, institutions were encouraged to complete the survey in coordination with institutional stakeholders involved with developing the institutional RDM strategy. The office mostly contributing to the survey were from the research office and library. Other services or offices that were part of the process included ethics, IT, researchers, CIO, and legal. To better support institutions in the development of their institutional RDM strategies, we asked institutions to report on the barriers they face when meeting the agency's RDM policy requirement. As you can see, the top 3 barriers are lack of time and budget, lack of understanding and awareness of the agency's expectations, and the lack of supporting materials. Interestingly, lack of RDM knowledge and no barriers were low on the radar. To better support institutions, it is important to understand where they are in the strategy development process. 9 institutions were reported to have not started, and this is down compared to the 2019 survey, where there were 20 institutions reported not starting. The active stages of RDM strategy development were divided into 3 phases. The initial phase is the first, and most institutions are in this phase. It includes forming a working group or committee, reviewing available support materials, and assessing institutional RDM capacity. The second phase is planning. It involves envisioning the future state of RDM and creating a roadmap action plan. Fewer institutions are in this phase compared to the initial phase. The final phase is execution, and it is the creation of a draft strategy document and articulating the institution path forward through a roadmap or action plan. About the same number of institutions are creating a draft strategy document as in the planning phase. Less are articulating the institutional path forward through a roadmap or action plan. As part of the strategy, institutions were asked if they had launched their strategy. Via the survey, we had the University of Quebec, Chicoutimi, Dalhousie University, and ENAP reporting that they had launched their strategies. And since the release of the survey, the following institutions have launched their surveys. It's Queen's, Université de Laval, and University of Guelph. Top stakeholders were the same as in the 2019 survey and included the research office, library, IT, ethics, researchers, and the CIO. Additional stakeholder categories were added to the 2022 survey, which were not in the previous survey, and include executive management, Indigenous Office Representative Council, legal, privacy office, graduate studies, and records management. Within these newer stakeholder categories, Indigenous Office Representative Council had one of the higher participation rates at 26. The other stakeholder categories have about equal participation within these newer categories. The top resource used by institutions to develop their institutional RDM strategy was the Alliance RDM resources, followed by existing policies and resources from other institutions, fellow colleagues at other institutions, and the maturity assessment models such as MAMIC and RISE. As part of the survey, we asked respondents that use the Alliance RDM tools to rank their perceived usefulness of these tools. The tools ranked either highly useful or somewhat useful included the Strategy Development Template, V2 and V3, version 2 and version 3, the Brief Guide, the Primer, and the MAMIC. About half of the responding institutions reported not using discussion prompts or videos, while a small number found these not useful at all. Institutions were asked about challenges or difficulties encountered during the process of developing an institutional RDM strategy. A large percentage of institutions have reported that they have started to coordinate working groups or committees, assess institutional capacity, and engage researchers. The top processes institutions are reporting that they will either not be doing or not started are creating a roadmap action plan, addressing disciplinary approaches, defining a desired end state, and estimating the cost of RDM-related activities, services, and infrastructure. The top processes selected at not applicable were estimating the cost of RDM-related activities, services, and infrastructure, and addressing disciplinary approaches. This stood out to us as needing a further investigation as to why institutions are indicating these processes as not applicable. Looking closer at the processes started by the institutions, the coordination of a working group or committee does not pose much of a challenge. The remaining processes, institutions appear to be having greater difficulties. The most challenging or difficult step in the process is estimating the cost of RDM-related activities. And again, addressing disciplinary approaches was reported as either difficult or not applicable. In this survey, 82% of respondents answered yes when asked, would an additional guidance and support be helpful as you continue to develop your institutional strategy? A high percentage of institutions responding to the survey are either somewhat interested or interested in having online documentation with tutorials, videos, webinars, workshops at either an institutional or regional venue. Having a workshop at a national venue had the least interest. And now we'll move over to the recommendations. Results show that institutions are engaged in the process of creating institutional RDM strategies by defining and integrating key stakeholders. For example, Indigenous Office, Representative Council, Privacy Office, the Legal Office, and other key stakeholders. In doing this, a more integrated ecosystem within Canadian institutions can be developed and sustained. In order to minimize barriers and challenges, additional resources will be needed. By building upon the RDM community of experts, institutions will benefit from the additional supports and resources. The RDM community of experts includes the Alliance, tri-agencies, and RDM network of experts. Increased involvement of the tri-agencies in developing these resources will not only enrich this community, but will provide clarity on expectations of an institutional RDM strategy. A number of institutions have published their strategies, and having the tri-agencies provide a central repository for institutions to share draft and final strategies prior to March 2023 deadline will encourage collaboration. In the future, tri-agencies and the Alliance should address the sustainability issues of RDM infrastructure and services by developing a financial strategy to coordinate the national investments in this area, clarifying institutions' shared and unique responsibilities, and giving guidance to researchers on eligible RDM budgets at their project level. If institutions are not seeing themselves as the best stakeholders to intervene in the disciplinary RDM norms and practices, tri-agencies and the Alliance need to develop forums and provide support for disciplinary societies to have RDM conversations, express their needs and concerns, and to encourage grassroots RDM initiatives within disciplines and across disciplines within the global open science context. We are developing a webinar series which will help guide institutions along the 3 active stages of RDM strategy development, which was discussed in a previous slide. Here are the dates and times, and stay tuned for more details. And we'll have another slide at the end with these dates and times. Thank you. Again, here are the report links for both the English and French reports. Alex and mine emails are listed here, and we'll be taking a couple of questions, and then Matthew Lucas will be speaking next.
So much, Lucia and Alex. So if you have a question, please feel free to type it in the chat, or if, oh, we have a raised hand. Excellent. Jane, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. It was excellent to hear the results and to know what different stages people are at. I have a question just about your last slide about forthcoming webinars, and I think that's just great. And I'm wondering who will be conducting them and what resources will be used for those webinars.
You want me to tackle that one, Lucia?
Yes.
So these webinars are being sort of put together in collaboration with Lucia and Alex and their team, and with NTIG and with the Tri-Agency. So we're still hammering out some of the details, but we'll have another slide at the end, which has dates and times. We don't quite have registration or names yet, but we're wanting to address, as Lucia indicated, every stage of the process for institutional RDM strategy development, and provide an opportunity for questions and discussions to really help people along. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect, Lydia. Thank you very much, and I am looking forward to those.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a few more questions. Cindy, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Lydia. And I echo the gratitude for this opportunity to learn more and to connect with colleagues across the country who are working on this. Can you please put the slide with the webinar dates up? I have a question specific to the flow of how they're rolling out. So what I'm wondering is, this will be helpful, but some of us are kind of moving through the initial stage already and in planning and just thinking about the shrinking timeline to get there by March. Would it be possible to bump up the dates of planning and execution for those that might be further along, and maybe do them instead of sequentially to have a concurrent series? That would give us more time to implement whatever learnings that we have. I don't know, just a suggestion.
We could think about that. Part of the reason we chose sort of the dates the way they are is throughout sort of August, people are either on vacation or busy getting ready for September. And then September is, September in a lot of colleges and universities, that's not the best time for this sort of thing, which is why the initial stage is September 23rd. And then we went into October and November. But we possibly could look at it. We also have to keep in mind with the Alliance, we're planning with the Alliance. So there's a bit of challenges to get it much earlier.
There's some scheduling challenges. What I will say is that we'll take that back and see what we can come up with, so that each of the webinars is useful to everyone, regardless of what stage you're in. And whether that's just making sure that we have the right people on the line, so that if you want to be able to get some advice and ask some questions about, let's say, the execution stage in September, that there's an opportunity to do that.
Well, that would be great.
So yeah, let me work at that. I think the schedule is as soon as we can possibly get it, but let me see what I can do about increasing that usefulness for those who are further ahead.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Great question. Biru?
Great, thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Lucia, if I pronounce your name correctly, and Alex as well. I have a question regarding the upcoming webinar. Last year, the Alliance had organized several town halls and spanning for, I think, like 2 weeks also. That was a significant amount of time being spent on town halls, etc., which was great. And we also had a chance to get together to learn which stage we're in. But what I'm interested in is, what is the difference between the upcoming webinar and the previous town hall, and who should be there absolutely for the upcoming webinars you're organizing?
So I wasn't at the previous town hall. I wasn't actually in the Alliance then. So I don't know if Lucia or Alex, were you there? Are you able to speak to that series?
I attended some of that. Jen Abel, who just put up her hand, was one of the coordinators of that.
Oh, okay.
and she probably could answer this much better than I could. I would say for this, this will probably be a little more focused on each piece within these stages, as opposed to last time where it may have been a bit more of a broad discussion of strategy development. But Jen, I think if you can provide more information than I can about that.
Yeah, I think I can probably do that. Hi, everyone. Biru, I'm assuming you're talking about the series that we had back in October of last year, as opposed to the Alliance town halls that were back in May of last year.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah, so that series focused broadly on the tri-agency policy, the different aspects, and then had a smaller component on the institutional strategies, a significant component, but it wasn't the focus of the entire series. And we did have a bit of a limited capacity, so not everyone in Canada who wanted to participate was able to, just because of technological limitations. So this series that is being developed as we speak is hopefully going to be able to reach some of the people who weren't able to be there last fall. I imagine we're going to have a focus perhaps on some of the smaller institutions who are in some ways getting caught up for a variety of reasons. One of the other things we'll be able to bring in is the experience of people who have been working on their institutional strategies over the last year. So as Alex and Lucia mentioned, there are people who are getting closer towards being completed in their strategy planning. So we'll be able to bring the experiences that they've had in going through those different areas to the sessions that we'll be planning. So it will be perhaps less of an instructional, as in you must do this, because every institutional strategy is going to be different, but more of a discussion of things that could be helpful, things that could be challenges in working through each of the sessions.
Yeah, and that the makeup of these sessions this year are somewhat more of a panel. So we'll have people from different institutions at different places within the development of the strategy to be able to talk about what they went through, what they did, how they did it. So it will be much more of a discussion from more like peer-to-peer training kind of thing.
We'll also have, thanks so much, Jen and Alex, for that. We'll also have a member of the Tri-Council at each of them as well.
Right, thank you. And I just have one quick follow-up question that is regarding the tri-agency's representative in these upcoming webinars. That is last time I recall, there was only one very short presentation from the tri-agency, and we have so many questions regarding that. And this is just a pure suggestion. If it is possible, it would be great to have more representative or more involved engagement with the tri-agency representative to be present in these stages, because at the end, this is a tri-agency policy that we need to comply to. And with the DMP requirements being rolled out as we speak right now, I'm sure that many of us are on the same page here. Will much appreciate their presence to be able to help us along in developing this strategy. But thank you very much for organizing this. This is super helpful.
Thank you. I'm really glad you found that helpful. We're just about at time, but I'm going to try and quickly address some of the questions in the chat that are about some Alliance stuff and some logistics. For the lunch and learn sessions in the fall, or sorry, the panel discussion sessions in the fall, we are unclear at the moment what kind of budget we're going to have. If we have the budget, we'll do simultaneous interpretation. If we can get bilingual panel members, we'll go for that. It's unclear at this point what that's going to look like, but that's definitely on the table, as it were. Registration, yeah, will be through the Alliance, similar to what we did for this one. Great suggestion from Shahira. I will take that. I'll copy that and take that back to our strategy department. Yep, Alex, I see he's responding to a bunch of them in the chat as well.
Yeah, one of the questions was about having a research hospital representative on the panels for the webinar series, and we're going to do our best to get as broad a representation in each of the at each of the webinars that we can. It may mean, the hospital rep might be in one but not in another, but we're going to do our best, because part of the idea of this is the peer-to-peer. So we really want to get as many people from different types of institutions as possible.
And also regionally as well. That's another.
And regionally, yeah.
Yes. I think we're at time now. I think we need to move over to Matthew.
Thanks so much, Lucia and Alex. I would now like to introduce Matthew Lucas. Matthew is the Executive Director, Corporate Strategy and Performance for the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. So thank you so much, Matthew, for being with us here today.
Thanks, Lydia. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks to Lucia and Alex and the rest of the expert group for the work that you've done on this survey and the previous survey, and just in general to support the advancement of data management practices across the country. A big thanks to everyone that's been involved in, I know, a number of expert groups that have been supporting the implementation of the tri-agency policy. I would like to acknowledge one of my colleagues who is on the chat, who I think many of you have already met through the chat, Alex Thistlewood. He'll be available to answer some questions on the chat if you want to put them in there while I'm speaking. I have been asked to keep my remarks relatively brief. I see a number of very familiar names and familiar faces, so hopefully what I'll say is familiar to many of you, but if you want me to go back and do anything I share, I will be very happy to do so. I'm just going to share my screen now. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep, looks good.
So as everyone knows by now, there are three elements to our research data management policy. The one we're here to talk about today, the institutional strategy, which we'll obviously say more about, the implementation of data management plan requirements in some of our grants, which I won't say a lot about, but I can speak about if there are questions at the end. And finally, a data deposit requirement, which we will be consulting further with the community on before we determine an implementation date for that. But first to the institutional strategy. Everyone, I'm sure, is aware there is a March 1st, 2023 deadline for when those strategies are due. Many of you, I was really pleased to see in the survey, are already using the resources that have been made available from the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, the templates that were previously developed under Portage, with support of many of you across the community, I know. I know there have been some questions, and one of the recommendations in the survey is that we publish a page with links. It's not up yet, but we will be doing that. And as either final strategies or draft strategies that institutions are willing to share are available, we can post those so that people can see what their colleagues in other institutions are doing. Just a point here that I will repeat throughout this presentation is that we will not be assessing the quality of the strategies. We just want the requirement is that a strategy to support research data management be made public by the institution. We will be reviewing those strategies, but we will not be grading them. Really, we're seeing them as a source of information, both to the agencies, to other institutions, and to your researchers about the supports that are available, the opportunities that exist to collaborate within the ecosystem, and gaps that exist that remain to be filled. We do have an FAQ page. I would encourage you to look at that on institutional strategies. And also, I know Alex has put in the chat an email that you can send any questions to get in touch with us. And if your teams that are working on strategies have questions, I or my colleagues are very happy to meet with you, to talk to you directly about that. So very quickly, why are we looking for institutional strategies? In a nutshell, institutions are best placed to understand the needs of their researchers, best placed to know what tools they currently have available, and best placed to know where they would like to be in the future. We do not expect the strategies to to be able to provide the full range of supports necessarily. We know institutions are at different places in their ability to support research data management. And we know institutions, the research institutes have different needs. So one size does not fit all. We are not expecting these strategies to look the same. Again, we plan to use these strategies to, again, further engage with the community to understand how we and you together can support research data management. Monitoring and compliance. Again, this is really in the spirit of collegiality to raise research data management capacity across the countries. We are not evaluating them, but we will be looking at them closely because I think this will be a very useful source of information about where capacity exists, but also where opportunities lie for perhaps institutions to work together regionally, where people can leverage each other's strengths and support each other's weaknesses. So I would encourage all of you too to look at the strategies from some of your colleague institutions. And I said we will be publishing links to those strategies shortly. Some very quick responses to some of the common concerns that have been raised. I know a number, I think the second concern was a lack of information from the granting agencies about what we're expecting. We have purposely not provided too much detail on that. The policy does lay out some requirements I can talk, or some expectations, and I can talk about them in a moment, but they're relatively high level. We want this to reflect where your institution is currently, where it would like to be, and we also recognize that these will evolve. I know one of the questions that has come up is whether we will accept draft strategies. If you're willing to make the strategy public, that will be acceptable. We understand that the strategy for any individual institution may evolve over time, and that's absolutely fine. When you revise it or finalize it, just either give us the new link or update the document. That is not a problem at all. And again, I would reiterate, it's not the expectation everyone is shooting for some gold standard strategy here. We want this to reflect your capabilities and where you are. It would be great to see aspirational elements to them, or where you would like to be and how you might work to get there. But we know everyone is in a different place right now. There are some resources available for institutions, and clearly we have not done as good a job as we should have in making these well known. SSHRC has a capacity grant opportunity. We've had it for a number of years, and it's now been extended, providing up to $25,000 for meetings or workshops to develop, whether it's to develop strategies, to have disciplinary conversations about what research data management might mean. Honestly, anything about RDM where you're bringing parts of the community together, with whether within one institution or multiple institutions, or with the discipline, or however you envision that, that's what these grants are there to support. And whether or not it's in the social sciences or other fields, we are happy to support those engagements. So I would encourage you to go and have a look at the landing page for that opportunity, or ask us questions. We'll put you in touch with the right people who can provide more information about them. But they are there. They have been used in a number of situations. A number of workshops have been supported through these, but they are there to be used, and would really encourage you to use them. CIHR has a learning module which provides some additional information, and of course the Alliance has a wealth of tools. And I will again just thank the Alliance and their predecessor Portage, and all of the volunteers from across the country that have worked tirelessly to create these tools. I've said it, I think, every time I've spoken. Without you, it would not have been possible to launch the policy when we did. And so just really, really pleased to, well, thankful for all the work that has been put into this, and looking forward to continuing what's been a fabulous relationship with Portage and the Alliance as we all work together to support data management. And really pleased to see this series of workshops, and pleased to participate. And if there are other things the agencies can do to support you, again, don't hesitate to let us know. With that, I'm going to stop talking. I understand there are a few questions. I'm happy to do my best to answer them. If I can't answer them, I will get back to you as quickly as I can with an answer.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and scroll up and identify questions that haven't been answered in the chat. Alex has been doing a great job of that. I also just want to mention that we will be saving the links that have been posted in the chat, and we'll make it available to registrants afterwards and to the CanLib data listserv. So don't panic if you haven't saved all the links from the chat. We'll have that. We'll have the slides in French and English for both sections. So just, yeah, don't worry about that. And we will be posting the slides on the website as well. So we'll try and make sure that people have access to everything that was here today, particularly those who were not able to make it. Are there any, if anyone has any questions for Matthew, you can, if you can raise your hand, then we'll invite you to come on mic. Hey, Lena, I think you had your hand up first.
Hi, just a really quick question. Thanks for your presentation, Matthew. I know that in the past, the SHRC people like yourself or the other executive leaders have been open to doing sort of tailored presentations if institutions request them. Is that still true?
Absolutely. I'm happy to meet with whomever would like to meet. If you have, I know a number of organizations have created working groups to develop strategies. If you'd like a meeting, I or my colleagues would be happy to do that. Nice to see you, Lena, by the way. It's been a long time.
Nice to see you. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you, Lena. Jane, go ahead.
That was a great question, Lena, and thanks for the answer, Matthew. We'll definitely contact you if we need to. My question is about the beginning of this presentation. Alex Cooper mentioned that it can be a draft copy of the institutional strategy that goes up in March. I hadn't realized that before. Could you talk about that?
Sure. I mean, we hadn't really given much thought to whether it was a draft or a final copy. These are living documents, so we've always understood they would evolve as the capacity of institutions evolves and as the tools available in the ecosystem evolve. But if your institution wishes to post a strategy and have it labeled draft, that is fine. We'd be happy to accept that as being in compliance with the policy. Yeah, there's no issues there on our account.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That's great to know.
Question from Carla.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. First off, thank you to all the presenters. This has been extremely helpful. And I really just wanted to follow up on a question made by Lena earlier. Matthew, I think it's incredibly awesome that you're available to us for any further consultation through meetings. If we would like to reach out to you and your team for a meeting, and maybe I missed this somewhere, but how would we get a hold of you or someone on your team for further consultation?
I would say you can contact me directly, but if you ask my team, I'm notorious for having such a full inbox that may be dangerous. So I would suggest contacting Alex Thistlewood, who is online. And Alex, you might want to also put in, I think we have an email address for people interested that they can write to that you're monitoring or the team is monitoring as well. So Alex will put in the email coordinates where you can connect. And
thank you kindly.
I should probably apologize. I know at various times people have contacted me directly, and I do apologize if I've missed some of those emails over the time. But if you CC Alex, he'll definitely make sure I don't miss it.
Understandable. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Great. And yeah, Alex, if you can post that in the chat, and we'll make sure that that is included in the package that we send out to registrants after as well. Are there any other questions for Matthew? I'll also note we have James Dwaran on the line today, so if you have some DMP questions, he's here as well. Thank you, Leanne, for those inboxes.
I imagine everyone saw, well, maybe not, but saw the announcement about the launch of of the first programs we're going to be requiring DMPs for. So we're still developing tools to help research, to explain to researchers what is expected, and still developing ourselves internally the way in which we will be seeking DMP information for those applications. So stay tuned, more information will be coming on that shortly.
Question from Seppo. Does the draft eligibility apply to other agencies as well?
Well, I'll say yes. We're not really distinguishing among the agencies in terms of it is a tri-agency policy. So if you're compliant with the policy, you're compliant with all three agencies. I think we'd expect that maybe the draft to disappear from the policy at some point. But honestly, there are no plans on March 1st to penalize institutions that are not yet in compliance. Our plan would be to contact those institutions to understand the challenges they face. And so if an institution has not yet published any strategy online, we will be contacting you shortly after, probably early in April, to understand your challenges, where you are in the process, if there are additional supports that can be provided to help you get your strategy online in the coming months and so forth. So our intention is to work closely with the community to support where we can, and so would welcome you reaching out to us with challenges. But certainly, if you have a draft strategy, putting that online as a strong indication that you're well on your way to either finalizing the strategy or developing something, I guess, that your management team has blessed, that we would review that as being compliant.
We have a couple other questions in the chat. One asking if we can confirm if the deadline has been extended beyond August 2022 for RDM connection grants. I'm assuming that's the CG.
It has indeed.
Thank you. And then for the survey within institutions about research data status, are steering committees regularly seeking ethics board approval before launching those internal surveys?
I can speak a little bit to that. I know here at Queen's, we did seek ethics approval because we were talking to faculty members. And I do believe some other schools are seeking ethics approval. I don't know how many of you are aware of the surveys that were run between 2015 and 2019 that were RDM surveys run at individual institutions. Most of those had it was more of an RDM capacity or readiness that was sent to researchers within these individual institutions, and pretty much all of those had received ethics approval before they were sent out. And I'll also point out, this is a bit of self-promotion, that a group of us did write a paper about those RDM surveys that was recently, oops, hold on, I just put the wrong link in there. That was recently published in the Partnership Journal. And you can see that the data and a link to the article is at that DOI I just put in the chat. Also, that's a Borealis DOI. There is also in that collection some templates for ethics applications for this sort of survey that may be of use.
Thanks so much, Alex. Do we have any other questions? I'm just going to give it a couple minutes and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the upcoming webinar series in the fall. Okay, I see a couple more questions. Or statements coming in the chat. Yes, and the link to the paper and the ethics templates, whatever is in the chat in terms of links and stuff will be provided. It might take us a little bit to collect everything and format it down, but we will gather everything that's in there. From Allison, for us, this was seen as a quality assurance / improvement activity, so it wasn't needed to have REB approval. We have REB person on our working group, so we had her guidance. So I think that's a comment on the ethics. Yeah, I will save the chat for sure. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen here and give you this little save the date card. Can everybody see that? Yeah, as mentioned previously, we're going to be looking at sort of providing panels with representation as best as we can in terms of regional and different types of institutions. Research hospitals are mentioned. We'll also, we're looking at some different options for how we can present this as bilingually as possible, but I don't have details on that yet. I expect registration for this to go out before September. But the last few weeks of the Alliance have been a little bit crazy. So I don't want to give you a firm date and then run over it. September, again, we'll have that focus on the first period that Alex had the slide up for that earlier, but I think we will, based on the feedback during this meeting, I think we'll be looking at how we can still achieve that while still providing an added value for those of you who are a bit further along in the process. Are there any other questions? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely do that. Any other questions for about the upcoming series? Any other questions for Matthew? Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Really glad this was helpful, and looking forward to seeing you all again in the fall. And as I mentioned, we'll be saving the chat and sending you all the materials from the session and letting you know when that registration opens for that follow-up series.